All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Active Minds podcast. In today's podcast, we will be talking about the Hey You OK campaign here at St. Cloud State and what this campaign is. It's a campus-wide initiative as a tool and resources to help guide students, faculty, and staff so that when we do encounter situations where we may need to check in on someone we're concerned about or have meaningful conversations, we have the resources and also tools and know how to have those conversations. So my name is Samantha. I'm a co-advisor here at Active Minds, and then I'm also a graduate assistant for Healthy Huskies, and I am in the College Counseling and Student Development Master's Program.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm the president of Active Minds, and I am a second-year clinical mental health graduate student.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm the secretary of Active Minds, and I am a senior psychology major and Spanish major.
Hi, I'm Mike Libby. I am an English and community psych major, and hopefully will be starting my master's degree in rehabilitation and addiction this coming fall.
I'm Olivia. I'm a chemical dependency and community psych major. I am a senior and looking into grad schools.
Hi, my name is Charlene Hanisch-Tyson. I am the advisor of Active Minds. I'm also a therapist here on campus at the Counseling Center in Eastman Hall. And I just want to say that these steps that we're going to be talking about and then the personal stories, I think it's always really important to be able to reach out to people and just check in to see how they're doing. But I also want to highlight just during this pandemic how important this is and how powerful these steps are just in reaching out, particularly during this time of social isolation and uncertainty. So excited to be a part of this.
So we will get started with going through these steps. So at the end of this podcast, you'll feel a little bit more prepared when you do encounter these situations where you may have to check in with someone. So the first step is just the asking, like, how do you ask, hey, you okay? The first step is acknowledging or finding a person to check in with, and kind of how you would do that is maybe you notice you're concerned about a particular thing that someone is doing. And to do this, you want to make sure that when you do open up and talk to them and check in with them, you want to make sure that you are in a private space so that when you do have the conversation, that person is able to open up to you without worrying about others hearing. And you want to make sure that when you do begin the conversation, you have a open enough time to begin the conversation. And so does anyone have an example of just a situation where you needed to check in with someone?
I guess I'll jump in here, especially since we're in a pandemic. I think a lot of this communication comes via the form of social media. And so I guess with me, whether it's someone reaching out to me, asking me if I need help or vice versa, if I see like a Snapchat from someone and they just look sad or something seems off, I'll ask them and I'll start up the conversation there, because it's the most obvious form of you see it happening. And it's, in a pandemic world, like, that's almost as good as you're going to get. So that's really where I always start off on.
Yeah, and kind of with the pandemic right now, it's just really good to check in with all our friends. Like, sometimes it's okay to just be like, hey, how are you doing? That's okay too. Like, there doesn't have to be a particular moment or situation, but just remember to check in with everyone.
I can speak in terms of being a clinician in the field. When I have a client who is really, really struggling and can't make it to the next week until we meet up again, I will often just schedule a 15-minute, 20-minute just check in and just, hey, let's do a Zoom session, let's do a call. I just want to make sure, I just want to see how you're doing. One, because I care, and two, because I know this is a really trying time. So for me, professionally, I've increased my check-in contacts with students. I think it's been really helpful. So we're not all, we're all in this together. And that's a nice a nice experience for students, I think. I'm wondering, has anyone checked in on you? Does you ever experience that at some point? And what, if so, what did that feel like?
Yeah, like I was kind of touching on, like, I guess I'm someone who's like too anxious and too not self-aware enough to where I don't really hide it. Like I'll kind of show that I'm sad, and most of the time someone will catch on and ask me how I'm doing, and that kind of gets the ball rolling on a conversation. It's really good to be able to have that comfort and confidence to be able to ask somebody, but just any small thing can really be a tipping point in getting that ball rolling to starting that conversation.
That sounds great.
Kind of like a side story. Most of us live with roommates, and we check in on each other, and it's not like intentional, oh, hey, how are you? What's going on? It's more so like you can pick up on the different vibes that they give off and how their moods are. So I think that's really important. I know even this was just last night, my roommate was down in her room and I hadn't seen her all day, and she was home all day because obviously Zoom classes, yay. She was down in her room and I hadn't seen her all day. So I went down there and I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, I haven't seen you, blah, blah, blah. And she was fine. She was just busy doing homework. Life gets ahead of you. But yeah, I feel like that's really important. And we definitely keep an eye out for each other now that we aren't really leaving the house much. So, especially in the time of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I'm sure that even though she was doing all right, like having that check-in, even though things are okay, can always mean a lot, just to know that someone's there and thinking about you in any way or time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like I don't know, if someone were to knock on my door and say that to me, I would be like, oh my gosh, you care about me. It's a nice feeling.
Olivia, when you talk about that, it reminds me, now that we don't have students coming into our offices anymore, at least at this point, my colleagues and I are behind closed doors. We're trying to protect ourselves and each other. But then at times, we certainly have our doors open as well. But I noticed one of my colleagues had this particular colleague's door closed most of the day. And it made me really wonder. And so when this colleague opened their door, I did check in to say, just notice that your door was closed more often than usual. I just want to check and see how you're doing. And this colleague was like, wow, well, thank you for noticing. I really appreciate it. Because, these are trying times, and we don't know. We don't know how each other are doing unless we ask. So I know that my colleague really appreciated that.
I think the biggest thing is it's not only people that we know in our personal lives, people that we're not seeing show up for class. Right now we've got smaller class sizes. One of my classes, we were down to 8 students, started off with 15. Just being able to reach out, and saying, hey, I haven't seen you here in a while. You doing okay? I think a lot more students right now are struggling, and I'm going to go off on the whim and say it's probably the pandemic, but it's probably other stuff that was there before the pandemic hit and just amplifying it. I don't know. I check on anybody that's in my classes that have not shown up for Zoom meetings in a few weeks. Usually by the second week, I'm sending them an email or reaching out to them on Facebook, or it's the way I've always been. But just a thought.
Very good point.
All right, so let's jump into step number 2. So step number 1 for the initial just checking in, starting that conversation with someone you may be concerned about, or just checking in with someone. And then step number 2 is the listening. So being there for that person while they tell you their story without judgment. So you want to make sure that you don't rush them through this conversation, because as they open up to you, it may take them a little bit of time to process everything and be able to share their story with you. You also want to make sure that you use open-ended question to keep them engaged, but show them that you're listening by paraphrasing or kind of restating what they tell you. And this is a really good way for them to check to make sure that you are understanding them correctly. Does anyone have a story to share where maybe you listened to someone without judgment, where you completely listen to their story, or a time where someone was able to just like be there for you and listen to your story without interrupting or giving you advice that you didn't need, and just kind of being there for you?
Probably not really. I don't know how to put this. So most of you that have known me for the last year know my story about a friend of mine. It was about this time last year, he had reached out. He's like, hey, I'm really, really struggling. He has struggled with past addiction issues. And the thing that led up to this was we always had conversations. And it's like, hey, are you doing okay? How are things going with you? Because he relapsed over the summer. And the colder months, the isolation made it a lot harder for him. So a lot of this was just him sending me a message, sending me a text, giving me a call. And it wasn't necessarily me instigating these. It was just me checking in so much that him knowing he had somebody that he could rely on when times got tough. They were non-judgmental. And it's coming up on a year from his passing, but it was more about the times that he would reach out. It was the reasons he'd reach out, because there's somebody there. I don't know. It's some real talk. Still really hard to deal with at times, but I don't know. It's gotten better. It's a tough situation at times with just thinking back by everything, but it's just giving somebody that option to know, hey, there's somebody here that cares. And he's had friends longer than I was in his life, but a lot of those were related around addiction and use. And I'm not somebody that uses. I never have. It's not for me. But it's I don't know. It's giving somebody, I guess, a sense of purpose.
Michael, it sounds like your friend really knew that he could turn to you, and that you would really just be authentic and listen, and be kind of that soft place to land. Sometimes we don't know the impact of our impact. We just don't know the impact of our responses or what we say. But I think it's important that you did respond, and that you were there as just a friend. So glad you could be there for that person. And I think this is a really hard step. For trained therapists, this is what we do for a living. But you don't have to be a therapist to just really be a good listener and be present. Just showing up. And sometimes you don't have to say a thing. Just really actively listening and demonstrating empathy and a willingness to be present. So, Michael, it sounds like that you had that automatically with this particular friend.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm seeing it now more with this nephew. His nephew and him are really close, and his nephew's been reaching out a lot more, which I'm very happy for.
And sometimes when we do listen, we won't know what to do, or we feel powerless, or it feels like someone's emotions or needs, mental health needs, are greater than we could even know what to do with. And sometimes it turns out where we do listen, and the person continues to struggle and may potentially end their own life. And we can go through feelings of responsibility, but just know that, just that all we can do is just to be there to set our life aside for just a little bit, and just really focus on the need the person in front of us or through social media. And then, of course, moving into that next step, which is lend a hand. That's another really important step, that if this is way over our element of being able to support and help someone, then we want to help them find and connect with someone or service that can help them. So Samantha, do you want to talk about that third step?
Yeah, so like Charlene talked about, that third step is really about you helping that person with whatever they need. So a really good way to do this is just by asking them how you can support them, specifically right now during the pandemic. A few examples of that could be maybe someone just needs someone to do their grocery shopping for them. That could be a way to support them. If they're wanting to go to counseling, you can maybe drive them to their appointment, or just even encouraging them to talk to, like tell them about the different resources at CAPS or the medical clinic. And really what the step is just kind of you being there for that person and helping them, and kind of also understanding that you don't have to solve this issue for that person, just being there and like seeing what resource is available for that person. Does anyone have any examples of a time where you were able to help someone out, or when someone was able to help you out in a situation?
I guess sometimes before, because like in between, if I have like a CAPS appointment or something, I'll have like a big gap in between where I just don't feel the need to go, which is not always a good thing. Like sometimes you should always go until you really feel okay. But sometimes I'll go through like something that really hits me hard, and the only thing that keeps me from doing it is just like I need that like final push. And so if someone just even suggests like setting up a CAPS appointment or anything, like that can really be like the only other push I need to actually pull the trigger and do it. Because it can sometimes, like just thinking about it and being like, do I want to do this? It can be, even though it's like a click of a button at times, it can be a really big obstacle in overcoming.
And Aaron, thank you for saying that about a resource, which is Counseling and Psychological Services, or CAPS, here on campus. So for those of you who are listening to this podcast and you are a student, we are providing telehealth services through Zoom, and so our phone number is 320-308-3171, and all you have to do is call and set up an appointment, and we will we'll get you into the schedule. If you are feeling suicidal and you just need to speak with someone immediately, or you're just really emotionally distraught and you can't wait until next week for an appointment, just please do tell the receptionist, and she will get you in immediately with someone. So thank you, Erin, for that. Also, for those of you, in terms of a resource, for those of you who are helping someone through a mental health crisis and it's after hours and you just don't know who to turn to, and you're in the four-county, the tri-county area, which is the four-county area around Stearns County, Stearns, Benton, Sherburne, and Wright. There's a crisis response team that will respond immediately. They're like the St. Cloud and surrounding areas 911 for mental health, and they are fantastic. Their phone number is area code 320-253-5555. 5555. Yeah. And so they really are a good resource as well. So for those of you who do find themselves reaching out and lending a hand to your fellow peer, friend, family member, those are two resources that are very helpful, as well as any other mental health center in the community or near your community. Courage counseling it can be really helpful.
So step number 4 is keeping in touch, and that's really what that step really is about, is just making sure that you continuously check in with that individual that you first had the initial, hey, you okay conversation with, and the step really shows that you're truly there for them, not just having that one-time check-in to see how they're doing, but you're really showing them that you're there to support them. Does anyone have an example of a time where you were able to check in with somebody multiple times, or a time where somebody actively remembered to check in with you, or what are ways that you use so that you remember to check in with your friends?
I think for me, because I'm a very social person, I naturally just like want to hear from my friends. So when I don't hear from them, I think it's a little goofy. So I'll reach out. I'll be like, hey, what's going on? How are you? Or and not even like trying to get anything out of them personally, like a personal topic, but just making sure that like they're good, And whatever your definition of good is, I don't know. But to make sure they're in the right mindset, I think that's really important. So that's what I do. I just reach out to my friends. They reach out to me if we haven't talked in a while. So simple, but effective.
Olivia, I think, those two words, simple and effective, I think those are two really important words to really think about that when we're thinking about keeping in touch. When we reach out to someone and they really are struggling, let's say they're suicidal, or they've thought about it, or they are self-harming, or they just can't stop crying, or they can't get out of bed, or they're just really down and they can't get their emotions back to what they used to be. And we've done we've asked them, hey, how are you doing? We're there to listen. We lend them a hand. And then if we just drop the ball and don't follow through, that can really cause them to feel like, does anyone really care? Does anyone really, does it matter whether I'm here or not? And so by checking in really shows them that, no, I do really care about you. I can't take this all away, but at least that there's one person in this world that is thinking about you and cares, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people in the person's world that feel the same way, but all it takes is one person to kind of stop their day for just a moment and just check in, and it can be a text, it can be a private message, it can be a phone call, it can be something at the doorstep, at this point, given that we are not necessarily seeing one another actively, but it can just be really creative ways just to let the person know. And then also just making sure, are you okay? Are you feeling emotionally stable, or do we maybe need to go to the hospital, or do we need to maybe call a parent or a loved one?
I wanted to add on to what Charlene was saying, like, don't count on somebody else checking in with this person. Don't fall into the idea that they have someone else to reach out to them, or even if they do have an army for a support system, you checking in with them is going to mean something else than someone else checking in with them.
Right. Good point.
Yeah. And then that brings us to step number 5, which is be real. And throughout this conversation, we talked a lot about you initiating that check-in and you starting that, hey, you okay conversation. But step number 5 kind of reminds us that it is also okay when someone asks us how we're doing. It's okay to be real with them and kind of really tell them how we're feeling if we're not okay. And it's okay to express that with others too. And you don't always have to be the one who ask like, hey, you okay? It's okay for others to ask you and to kind of really tell them how you're feeling in that moment. Does anyone have an example of a time when they were asked if they're feeling or how they're feeling, and you were able to kind of really tell that you were really able to open up and tell your story to someone who was concerned about you, or just a time when someone checked in with you and you were really able to open up?
I think when people, when we ask each other, hey, how are you? Oftentimes it's just it's a way to say, hey, hi, I acknowledge you, good to see you. But then there's that other question that's the same phrase, but asked differently, like, how are you? It's like, no, really, how are you? And so when someone asks you that, I encourage you to really see, how are they asking like a, hey, pass by, I just want to acknowledge, your presence, you're important to me. Or is this someone who's really, really wanting to know and is going to give you the time? Because those who are really going to give you that time, this is that step where just really be real. Someone really is checking in on you. Let them know how you're doing. We all are struggling at some level for a variety of reasons, and it's okay to talk about that. And it doesn't mean that you're not okay, like, that there's something wrong with me because I have these feelings. This just means right now at this moment, I'm struggling. And I want to let someone know about it, and I want to talk about it and find some resolution if at all possible. At least, the very least, at least to know that I'm not alone and that someone cares. Smith, as we wrap up, do you want to maybe briefly talk about peer wellness coaching as we're talking about resources?
Sure. Yeah, so one of the resources, other than CAPS, Counseling Psychology Services, and Medical Clinic, is wellness coaching. They're located in Eastman, here with Healthy Huskies, but they're also a really great resource if you just want to have a conversation with someone. What they really focus on is helping you reach goals that you set for yourself and helping you get to those goals. And they're just a really good a starter place if you're not sure if you want to go straight to counseling service yet. They're just really there to listen to you and kind of help guide you through whatever goals you want to reach. And so if you want to set up an appointment with them, their number is 320-308-4179. And then you can also email to set up an appointment at wellnesscoach@stcloudstate.edu.
All right, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast, and encourage you to use these steps for yourself, and also allow someone else to check in with you and to be real and be present and accept the support.